Okay, so once I press post on this Facebook one, then we can probably restart it, and then I'll just need to then put it on Twitter, and then we'll be up everywhere. So once
Okay.
are you ready?
Yeah. Okay. So apologies for everybody that is watching after if there's this long delay. Just having some technical issues. So sorry about that. I don't know if you're live or watching the YouTube version after and this is on, I sincerely apologize, but we're just going to restart. We welcome to Out of Left Field, our first live episode 12 of the season. Jonathan, how do we follow us?
So we are up on the socials. We are live on YouTube, and we are, as we speak, sharing it on our social pages. We are on Facebook, Out of Left Field Podcast. We're on X at Out of LF Pod. Same thing on Instagram. I think that's it. Did I miss anything?
Substack.
Substack, yeah. Out of Left Field Podcast on Substack.
Right. Which we are working on that as well. But thank you everyone for watching and listening. We are, episode 12. As mentioned, it's been kind of a historic week. We'll just touch on this again, of course, for those that did not hear this live on the audio. Of course, pretty historic week in Canada. The men's, and we should say the men because the women did play soccer here in this country and in Vancouver before, but it was the first ever men's World Cup soccer match this week as Canada defeated Qatar 6-0 behind 52,000 people in Vancouver. First ever match in Vancouver. They, of course, they played their second game of this World Cup when they tied Bosnia. Really incredible electric atmosphere all around downtown Vancouver, and just a great day. Sunny day. It felt like Canada Day out here. Just people were celebrating in a celebratory mood, and few Qatar fans out there too. The only thing the biggest thing that was just awful was the Kone injury. I don't watch it. Not that it was a dirty play. It's just a brutal thing to look at. It just will make you cringe. Good on TSN for not showing the replay of that and showing it from a bit of a distance. So, I think overall, I think as we said before, a couple of things. I don't think we've given the women enough credit for. I don't think we've given the women enough credit for how they have kind of set the tone for the men in soccer in this country, competing in the Olympics, competing for a medal in the Olympics, competing for the World Cup themselves, winning the World Cup. Christine Sinclair being the international goal scorer leader all time. They are the pioneers that have set foot for the men's soccer team and the standard that has been set.
Yeah, absolutely. And the broadcasts have done a good job of making that distinction about that being the first men's World Cup win, and before that, the first men's World Cup result. You've seen Christine Sinclair at the games in this World Cup. So yeah, you're totally right about that. And on our first launch today, we talked a little bit about the similarities in the state of where Canadian soccer and baseball are, and how I feel like they're both kind of in similar stages where I think it's totally okay for Canadian soccer fans to celebrate a large win against Qatar. Um, it, it's good to celebrate the first result, even against Bosnia, because we're on our way up, and we haven't done this before, so we can celebrate and get excited. Um, Eventually, we're going to come up against a side that um, is flat out better than us, but that's okay because our side is on the rise, and the sport is on the rise in the country, and that's kind of how I feel about baseball too. It's like, I think it was 2006 when Canada beat the U.S. at the World Baseball Classic with a hugely outmanned roster. It kind of feels similar, not exactly the same, but kind of similar. So yeah, I mean, if we're when Canada is in the World Baseball Classic, if us as baseball people are asking others to get on board with our sport, um, then it's only right that we hop on board and support soccer.
Yep. I just think that the conversation in Canada is, and I say this as a person that hosts a hockey podcast called Shifts and Pucks, by the way. We talk and live in Vancouver. I think hockey is at times far too dominant of the conversation, and I do think we need to have other conversations, especially in the Vancouver market where it's all Canucks all the time, and it just gets exhausting with everybody's. It's time at times to have the subject change, and I think this is well needed in this country. But I do we do need to have a conversation about something that did happen quite historically here uh, in this country, or an announcement had happened. And it was back actually in 2007, 2008, Jonathan, that the Toronto Blue Jays used to be on CBC. They used to be they were non every day. That was at the time that was more kind of a TSN thing, but there was weekend games with Jim Houston calling those games on. They used to be on CTV, then they moved to CBC for a while in the mid 2000s before Rogers has been carrying every game for a good chunk of time now. But hockey night, I bring this up because a historic announcement between Sportsnet and CBC this week announced the end of hockey night in Canada and CBC. And we don't know what's the future or what is all going on here. I think there's a bunch of moving parts to this conversation. And just full disclosure, I'm an employee of Rogers. I don't really want to talk about the Rogers part of this, but I do want to talk about the contribution. We talked about this also on the CFL podcast, a third and goal. Like I think that this is kind of what the CBC's contribution to sport in Canada. Especially first of all for hockey, there's only two calls in the hockey history that were not on CBC. Two of the greatest calls: Sidney Crosby, the golden goal, which was Chris Cuthbert on CTV, TSN, and the World Juniors, back when one of Jordan Eberle's goals. Can you believe it? Those were the only ones. Everything else in terms of hockey, anyway, we have watched, and it has been presented on a CBC channel. Every Stanley Cup that has been raised, most of the NHL hockey moments have been for any Canadian team, have been on CBC for the most part for the playoff moments. The Flames Stanley Cup was on CBC. All of the Oilers Stanley Cups were on CBC. The Canadian Stanley Cups were all on CBC. It was a sad announcement. I mean, I don't really want to get into CBC, whatever. People can have their opinions on CBC, but there's no question that they've contributed to the sport culture in Canada. Even they've presented the CBC. By the way, they presented women's soccer on CBC, so they've been a huge contributor to the sports landscape in Canada. And I do think that they do need to be recognized for that. A lot of we don't know Elliot. We would not have known Elliot Friedman if it not were for the CFL on CBC, as an example. Everybody has been talking about Ron McLean and Don Cherry as two names. Let's not forget Danny Gallivan, Bob Cole, Harry Neal, Jim Houston, um, John Garrett, late rest in peace. A number of significant play-by-play voices of sport went through
Yeah.
CBC. Don Whitman, let's not forget him. There was a time that the CFL and the CTV split the Grey Cup. One half was on CTV, the other half was on CBC. Like it's just like I do think that this was a sad, it's a sad kind of a sad announcement, and I do think CBC deserves to be recognized for the contributions that they've done to sport.
Yeah, it's definitely the end of a very significant era um, with that brand. Obviously, the presentation has changed, and we won't get too much into that, but it's an official end of an era for that brand. So, yeah, it's the memories for generations of fans. And like I've heard a lot of different types of memory discussion about it, and it's from an era where the sports audience at large was much more centralized. There was one game or two games on a Saturday night, and we all watched it. And there was a small number of announcers that people would grow up listening to, and they were kind of the soundtrack to childhood. And you were rattling off some of the personalities, and I looked at some of the past names that have gone on Hockey Night in Canada, and there's baseball tie-ins there with the different assignments that some of the former Hockey Night broadcasters have done. We'll start with Jim Houston. Obviously, an extremely accomplished hockey broadcaster, but he did Montreal Expos games from 1987 to 89, and then he was on the call when the Blue Jays won the American League East in 91, 92, and 93. So there's a crossover there for the hockey and baseball crowd. Jim Robson, you're a Vancouver guy. Jim Robson had some time on Hockey Night, and he also did Vancouver Mounties baseball games as well. A cool little note there about Robson. It was kind of a sad, symbolic day, but a lot of good memories to look back on, and a few crossovers to baseball too.
Yep, for sure. Anyway, let's get to the subject at hand, baseball, and because we just about an hour kind of fresh in our minds. So the Blue Jays were lost on Friday, 16-2 to the Chicago Cubs. Miles Straw had to pitch the last two innings because, well, the bullpen again and kind of what they're dealing with, and it's 16-2. And then the Blue Jays were down 5-0 in the fifth inning here in this one. So they were being outscored 21-2 by the Cubs. And then the bats exploded here in the seventh and the eighth, and they kind of hung on with a bit of their bit. Louis Varland pitches the last two innings. Varland does have a throwing error, but they come away with the 8-6 win. So I guess kind of just coming out of this, where are we at with the Blue Jays right now?
Yeah, today's game was on right before you and I logged on to set up here, and for half that game today, it felt like the Jays season was going down the tubes for real this time. They swept Boston. They played pretty sharp baseball in a 3-game sweep at Fenway Park. They're getting healthier, good pitching. It was feeling good. And then last night, the 16-2 meltdown with Miles Straw pitching instead of Tyler Heineman, because he would have been the guy if he were still on the roster. And then there was no response early on today, and thank God they got to the bullpen, because it felt like this could go, could be it felt anyway like this might be the end of it. Like it's been the Blue Jays' entire season. 3-game sweep at the Red Sox. Hey, we're back in it. And then they get beat up. And it's like Kevin Gossman had a quote earlier about, we're 2 steps forward, 2 back, 3 forward, 3 back. And that's what they've been all year. And there's less excuses now with people getting healthy. It's interesting you talk about Varland, because that's one of my talking points today, as the bullpen has been completely abused in the first half of the year. And that was one of the disheartening things about the 16-2 first game on or yesterday in Chicago, was Kevin Gossman just got ambushed and created that. I believe it was 6 innings for the bullpen and the 1 inning for Straw. The bullpen's getting abused. I think they have 5 of the top 12 appearance leaders for relievers in the American League are Blue Jays. So that's not sustainable. And they've already seen some regression from some of their relievers. So that's one of the most worrying things, is how beat up is this relief corps going to look when we get into August.
Yeah, it's a fascinating it's fascinating the use of the bullpen. I'm just looking at yesterday's stats. So the only one that didn't allow a hit was Nance. There was the return of everybody's favorite pitcher in Toronto, Brendan Little. 2 hits, 4 runs, 3 walks, a strikeout, 11 walks in total for that entire game yesterday.
Yeah, that was gross.
And then today, for Saturday's game, the 8-6 win. I'll just look this up. By the way, it was Jeff Hoffman that gets credit for the win. Did you know that?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Corbin 3 walks, Estrada 2 walks, Hoffman a walk, Fluharty a walk. So they ended up walking 7 batters this game too.
There was 2 errors, 2 defensive errors last night.
Yeah,
and probably 4 or 5 that weren't official errors, but that's another theme, is that this team just is not fundamentally sound at all. And that was a calling card of what makes this team good when they're good, is every ball that should be an out is an out. And that's just not the case at all this year. Kind of the lead man for that is Jesus Sanchez. They brought him in spring training in a trade for Joey Loperfido, who is a good hitter but less of a contact bat, and I think they were scared of their lack of power this year, so they sacrificed defense for somebody they thought was going to be a power bat, and Sanchez has not hit for enough power or consistency. and he's an absolute zoo in the outfield. And he's not the only one. Ernie Clement hasn't had a good year defensively. This is stuff that is just not sustainable.
Yeah, Sanchez isn't I'm just going to be polite. He's an adventure, I think. Like, uh, yeah, he's kind of tough to watch. But they did make, to their credit, they made a couple of really good defensive plays for the game on Saturday. Miles Straw makes a nice late in 8 inning catch. They're down 8-6. The bases were there was two on, I believe, and Hap hits it. Straw runs in and gets it. So they did make a good. They did make some really good defensive plays in this game Saturday, but Friday was just an absolute. That
Start,
was gong show in a lot of ways.
starters not going deep enough. Defense not good enough. This doesn't feel like a team that's going to be able to do much this year. I'll get to that in a second. Just while we're talking about the last couple of days, something that should be brought up, even though Kevin Gosman had his worst start in a long time yesterday, 2 innings, 7 runs, 7 hits, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. Finishing his second inning last night, he did cross 2,000 career innings, which is a very notable achievement. This is a guy that has had to work to remake himself at different points in his career. There's been moments in his career where it looked like it might be over for him. He broke in with Baltimore. He's been in Cincinnati, San Francisco. Just trying to pull up his player card, but I thought that was that's something that should get mentioned for a guy that's put together a really good career.
Yeah, 2,000 innings is pretty significant. Yeah, and like it's those type of games that happen on Friday are going to happen to everybody. They don't happen often. Gossman, he's been probably one of the steadier pitchers in the American League and in baseball. So that happens. I don't think you can necessarily blame that completely on him. But the defense behind him that was just not good enough from anybody. I mean, Davis Schneider makes an error at second base. It just was just not a good day overall. Even Okamoto, pardon me, he made an error at third base, and he rarely has been making errors this year. So
He's been really good. It was kind of tricky for him at the start of the year adjusting, but for the most part, he's been really good. But kind of in baseball, when things, when your pitchers are walking the world, and your defense is standing out there for a long time, getting flat-footed, and you're seeing other defenders commit errors. It kind of snowballs that way.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Um, Something I uh, probably a more fun note that I wanted to bat around a little bit. The Blue Jays are on this road trip to Boston and Chicago, Fenway and Wrigley Field, and that is probably, I think you would agree, those are the last two authentic, vintage, historic cathedrals that are left in the major leagues.
Oh, I think you forgot a big important one in California.
Dodger Stadium.
Yes, I think that's still very much a cathedral.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It
Wrigley,
just
Fenway, and Dodger Stadium, I think, are probably your three cathedrals. Bush Stadium, also, I wonder where you put that. Certainly, the history of baseball in St. Louis puts it up there. Kauffman Stadium is not necessarily recognized as a cathedral, but it's been there for a really long time, and it does have a. They have won world championships in Kansas City. They haven't won them in a while, but they've had some interesting moments there with that grass field kind of field of dreamy moment. Um, like I
I
don't know if you put Bush and Kauffman at the same level as Wrigley, Fenway, or Dodger Stadium, but it's not. Those are historic stadiums.
I hear what you're saying about Bush Stadium, but that's Bush Stadium number 3,
That's fair.
and they've done a good job. Like, it's kind of, for me, it's in a similar category to the current Yankee Stadium, where they've done a good job maintaining the look and the retro feel of it, but it's not the same building. And when the Jays have been in Boston and Wrigley this week, hearing the broadcasters talk about, um, you know, the same clubhouse and the same tunnel as, Ernie Banks and Ted Williams, and just those are two places that you're stepping in the same place that legends did things in decades ago, and a lot of modern parks have done a good job, and it's just a fact that time moves on. You have to upgrade and all that, but those two are just in a different league. With
Well, yeah, it's a
that is where massive history happened.
totally. So the levels, I would say, the three prima donna Rome Chapel. The smoke comes out when the Pope makes a decision. Are Fenway, Wrigley, and Dodger Stadium. I think the second level of that is probably Bush, Kauffman Stadium, and I just because of the history that has come out of New York, I think you have to put Yankee Stadium somewhere over there.
Yeah.
And then there's about 4 stadiums that I think are kind of in the absolute. They're not cathedrals, but you must go see them. Those are Oriole Park at Camden Yards, Oracle Park in San Francisco, PNC Park in Pittsburgh, and T-Mobile in Seattle. Those I think
Yeah.
are the other those are the 4 that you're like you got to see those. You got to go to a game there.
Yeah.
Those are the 2. Those are just
I
that's the purity of baseball.
I'll kind of give it back to you, for to see what kind of experiences you have. But you bring up San Francisco and Seattle, and I've been to both. My first major league game that I ever attended was 2000. I sat upper tank in right field in July of 2001, for Mariners and Royals, and Mariners won 4-0. Joel Pinheiro threw a one-hitter. Ichiro, rookie year in right field. That was my first game as a little kid, first major league game as a little kid. And then I've been able to come back in later years and actually work some written assignments and interview players. And so, yeah, that place has a special place in my heart. And I've been to one game at in San Francisco. It was opening weekend after they won one of their World Series. I can't remember which year because they won 3, I think, in alternating years.
Right.
But yeah, those are top tier parks. But yeah, where have you been?
I've only been to two. One at when it was called what the heck was it called? It wasn't called two. The name before. Um, it was the Mariners were playing Oakland. It was back in 2008. The team wasn't very good, but I went to a few games there, and I've been
In
to
in Seattle,
yeah.
the Kingdom.
No, not the Kingdom. The name
Oh,
that the T-Mobile was the this stadium, but it was under a different name. Safeco Field.
oh yeah, same place, just the
Yeah.
previous name. Yeah.
My apologies for those that are listening. I've been up since 4:30 in the morning, so if my brain is a little foggy, I'm working through this. But yeah, and then Toronto. My one regret is I wish I went to a game at Olympic Stadium. I know that that was not the greatest baseball stadium ever, but it just would have been really cool. One of my bucket lists though is Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and I did forget one. Petco Park is a beautiful stadium. Like it
Yeah.
just looks like with the brick wall and the with the storage building in left field, the planes flying over it. It's just an actual park in kind of a near center field. I think that's a great stadium too. So I think there's like 10 great stadiums, maybe 11. With Dalkin Park in Houston, I don't think is a. I think it's a close to up there, but I don't wouldn't put it like at the top.
It
But close.
Houston lost a couple of points for me when they took Tells Hill out at center field.
Yeah, that's
That
true.
was fun.
Yeah,
But like even closer to home, I mean, Nat Bailey Stadium in Vancouver,
beautiful.
tremendous old ballpark, and they've done a great job modernizing it and preserving it. The old Capilano Stadium, where I mentioned earlier, Jim Robson called some games for the Vancouver Mounties. I grew up doing games at Athletic Park in Medicine Hat, Alberta, which we talked about last week. Used to be home to the Medicine Hat Blue Jays, and a bunch of future big league stars went through there. Henderson Stadium in Lethbridge, which is now Spitz Stadium. That's where the Diamondbacks had their rookie league team, the Diamond Jacks, for a couple of years. And both of those parks have been modernized to keep it going for the next generation. So yeah, there's um, the new parks are phenomenal, but there's a different kind of love I have for the old parks.
Oh, for sure. One other one, and Remax Field in Edmonton is a really nice stadium. It's
Yeah.
just because you go down from the Legislator down the park there, and I believe the one in Saskatoon isn't too bad. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The Remax Field in Edmonton, it was built. I think it opened in '94, and it was built to basically preserve the Edmonton Trappers AAA team. But then Calgary
Yes.
wasn't able to get a new park, so Calgary left, moved to Albuquerque, and then once Edmonton was the only AAA team left in Canada, it was only a matter of time until the Trappers left. So they ended up losing AAA, and there's been various independent teams and summer league teams that have used Remax the last decade or so. But the last 2-3 years, it's been the Edmonton Riverhawks, who I've talked about before on this pod in summer league. They are pulling in numbers that Edmonton hasn't seen since the Trappers. They're putting 9,000 people in there for summer league games, so it's tremendous. Um, and what's the other one you brought up? Oh, Saskatoon, yeah. Kieran's Field. Yeah, we should give some love to the Saskatoon Berries in the Western Canadian Summer League. Um, some of the best branding in
Yes.
summer league or minor league baseball. The Saskatoon Berries with their deep purple uniforms. That park was actually renovated a fair bit before they ever knew they had a team, and then more has been done after the Berries came in about 3 years ago. So yeah, great old darts. We could go forever on that stuff. I love talking
Yeah.
ballparks.
Yeah. We'll have to do a ballpark ranking podcast at some point. But yeah, back to the
Uh,
Jays.
yeah,
Uh,
and I wanted you brought up can't remember if it was last week or a couple of weeks ago. You were kind of you weren't the biggest fan of George Springer, and I wanted to go back there a little bit because he hit his 300th career home run against the Red Sox in Fenway on Tuesday night. He's also hit 1,500 games. He's scored 1,000 runs in his career. 2 years ago, it looked like the end of the line for him. His power was gone, wasn't hitting much at all. Had a renaissance last year, and then most of this year has been a struggle again. But another guy similar to Gosman, who's had done a lot of good things for a long time. But you're mentioning in a previous episode you're not his biggest fan. I'm a Blue Jays fan, so I get more exposure to him. So that probably gives us different perspectives. But is it still the trash can buzzer thing, or what's your deal with
Trash
Springer?
can buzzer, yes. He's he's been part of the nemesis team, the Houston Astros, for all of those years. He's just not going to be one of my favorite people, and no matter how nice he looks like on in a Michael Cera commercial. And I do want to bring this up while we're at it. And when we do the review, because there was a massive controversy about the George Springer injury during the CS, and fans in Seattle that were cheering that. I have news for you, everybody. When you have beers and a number of drinks at a baseball stadium and an event, people are going to do something stupid. And that you shouldn't boo injured players. I will completely agree with you. But what kind of bothered me was there was a bunch of Blue Jay fans that suggested that there was the entire Mariners community going after George Springer. That was a section of fans that did. It wasn't appropriate. I agree. But to paint the entire Seattle Mariner fan base as booing George Springer was just nonsense. Complete nonsense. And
Yeah,
I'm sure, Jonathan, I'm sure if Cal Raleigh got injured, that Prime Minister Mark Carney would have asked for a complete moment of silence in Canada so we could all hope for his healing recovery as quickly as possible. And I'm sure that there would have been no Blue Jay fans, none, that would have cheered Cal Raleigh's injury. And I'm being sarcastic there. But there are idiots in every single
yeah,
fan base.
yeah.
It just happens.
I would agree with that. Was it when the Raptors was in the final? Somebody from the Warriors went down, and there was the same kind of thing where a few people were cheering it, but
Yeah,
it shouldn't happen. But for a small amount of people, it will happen.
yeah. It's bad. You listen. I bet you $1 to just bring this back to hockey for a second. There would be fans of opponents that would cheer if Connor McDavid got hurt. I bet you there would be fans of the opposed to the Vegas Golden Knights if Mark Stone was actually got hurt on the ice. Actually, that happened, I believe, during a Dallas Vegas series. there were Dallas Star fans that cheered Mark Stone's injury. So, like, I don't think we should be paintbrushing fan bases when everybody boos, except Philadelphia, because they did cheer, the Philadelphia Eagles fans did cheer Michael Irvin's injury during a Cowboys Eagles game. But for the most part, 99% of the fans are, for 95 to 99% of the fans are, going to be respectful.
Yeah. Just kind of wrapping up the bow on Springer. For me, when the Blue Jays signed Springer before the 21 season, yeah, we were still a lot closer to the Astros sign stealing, garbage can banging, buzzer era. And yeah, that was to a certain amount that probably, Springer all of a sudden being a Blue Jay motivated me to forgive Springer a lot quicker and the rest of those Astros from those years. But obviously watching a lot of their games and having a lot more exposure to him, um, from the outside looking in, seems like a great guy, a great teammate. Have to respect the player he's been. And even if Springer wouldn't have gone to the Jays, I don't think I would have been able to hang on to the hatred um, for that Astros team. Eventually, gotta let it go, right? Um, baseball's always baseball's always to a certain level been a game of who can cheat the best in different ways, and just as technology's gotten better, the the cheating methods have changed.
Well, sports hatred is valid. If that was the Yankees that were caught with the trash cans, would you have been as easily to forgive them?
I I probably honestly I might have been. I For me it's just
I'm not saying you would. There's no way. By the way, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying, damn, if it was the Yankees, you would hate them forever. You know it. I would be. I'm genuinely curious.
there similarly there would have been a point where it would have just been this is tiring carrying this on. Um, I who else were kind of the poster boys on that Astros team? Altuve, Bregman,
Cora, Tucker,
Correa.
Correa. Yeah, that whole lineup.
See, the Blue Jays fans have hated Kyle Tucker for 2 or 3 different reasons since the buzzer thing with
Yes, like
Tucker.
especially when they called him and he said, "New phone, who dis?"
Yeah.
Oh, are you Dodger? Oh yeah, well, I'm on my way.
Oh, good times. Another more old guy talk. Max Scherzer is back on the IL, and
Yeah.
this is starting to smell like this might be the end of the line for Max Scherzer. As I pull his player card up, he spent most of this season on the IL. Just to make sure I get the numbers right. ERA over 10 in 6 starts this year for the Jays. And with Shane Bieber is confirmed starting on Monday, so the rotation continues to get healthier for the Jays. He just doesn't look he doesn't look like he has it anymore, and there's less of a desperate need on the Jays' part. But for a legend of the game, I'm sure, and it's right, that they would want to try to make the end of the line or the dismounts as graceful as possible. So I've seen people theorizing that they might phantom IL him for the rest of the year and let him hang around and be a dugout and clubhouse influence. I'm not sure how feasible that is. Um, but yeah, I don't see much of a future here for Max Scherzer, and in a way, it's a shame. The great moments he had last year, um, he was, he had a great chapter with the Jays, and for it to fizzle out this way is kind of disappointing. But on the other hand, the Jays signed him back before any of us knew the Jays were going to be good. And I had a Jays fan friend, when they signed him, who was just fantasizing about, hey, what if we get a Max Scherzer start with the lid open in July? Like, what if we see him in Toronto one time and it's gone way better than that? So I don't know. What do you think could happen the rest of the way for Scherzer?
I would imagine. I think I was trying to think about Clayton when you brought him up. I was thinking about Clayton Kershaw because kind of at the end of the line for the Dodgers, and then they didn't put him on the playoff roster, but they put him on the World Series roster. But they gave him that one final hello or that final goodbye. Um, I think it's going to depend a lot on where the Blue Jays end up because I look back on his career. He's played in Arizona. He started in Arizona, Detroit, Washington, Dodgers, Mets, Texas. There's nowhere really where like any of these teams. None of these teams. Well, maybe Arizona. It might be a playoff contender. I don't think he's got that moment in him. Um, I don't know. I guess I think this is going to be up to Max. I think ultimately, I think they're going to let Max make the decision of what he wants to do. Now, you could trade him if you're not in the playoffs. Could he be a relief pitcher or somebody for a playoff contending team? He's done bullpen work before in the playoffs. Um, if you're not relying on him, but you can put him on a playoff roster and get some, and put him in spots where you think that he could. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if a team like just as an example, I'll go insane here. I don't mean to anger you, but this is the type of guy that I wonder if the Yankees would kind of sneak up and say, he doesn't have to do everything, but if we get one or two key outs from him, we're okay.
Yeah, I'm
That,
not.
that's what I wonder. I wonder if a team does that with Max.
I don't know if he has enough left in
Like
him to. Sorry.
he probably doesn't have enough to do two or three innings in a row, but could he get three batters out when you need him in a playoff?
I
He shows he's done it before.
I don't I don't know if he has enough left in him to get to October. I is he get it is he gonna last until October? I
Well,
don't.
if you're phantom ILing him, you got what? So you got 6 weeks or so till the trade deadline. Depends on where he
Yeah,
is at, right? So
it's Yeah,
And you rest the
it's
arm enough. Now, I mean, the Blue Jays are in an interesting position because they're fighting for that last wild card spot with Oakland, um, and a few other teams are in that conversation too. So, yeah,
yeah, it'll be interesting to track because it's an uncomfortable situation for sure. You got a future Hall of Famer who's been good for you, but if he just can't do it anymore, and you got a lot of racetrack left in the season, and the team is still trying to contend, they're still carrying a $300 million payroll with veterans coming off the books after this year. So they're still going to try to win. And if you can't contribute to that, how are they going to either end his tenure or try to keep him around for the rest of the year? I don't know the answer, but it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I'm going to circle back to my last Jay's point when we wrap up. But yeah, let's talk a little bit of Mariners. I caught a lot of their game last night, but as somebody who follows them a lot closer, what's going on in Mariners land?
yeah, it was a week of injuries and a week of piggyback. So the injury situation was all over the map. But what we currently, Julio got hurt. He came back. Josh Naylor got hurt. He came back. Luke Rayleigh is currently injured. We're not sure what's going on. Cal Raleigh came back after a stint with Tacoma. Randy Rosarena is on the IL. The only two that have been available for every game has been Dominic Canzone and Cole Young. Uh, so lots of injuries. There was a point where Dominic Canzone was batting cleanup. They got contributions from Miles Mastroboni. He was sent down. It got so bad that they called up a guy from High A named Curtis Washington because they just really needed a body to put it just in case. Then they sent him down. There was just a lot of transactions. We're not going to go through the entire transaction list because you know uh,
I
that was really long.
I did want to stop on the Curtis Washington Jr. call up for a second. Um, what position was he in?
Uh,
I don't. I forgot to note that
I'll look it up here. He
because
is a outfielder.
outfielder. Okay, because they called him up from the High A Northwest League in Everett, and they called him up to the Mariners, and he was up for what 24 hours.
Yep. A
So
little longer than that. I think they sent him down yesterday, Friday.
so up for a day or two. So do you have that's a that's a heck of a call up, man. So do you have any insights as to why they were they just that desperate for an outfielder to fill a uniform for a day or
I
two, or
I
what was going on?
I believe that is the case because there was just so many injuries. I mean, Wisdom up and down, Connor Joe up and down, Miles Mastroboni up and down. There's just so much going on. That's not the that's let's not forget the Colt Emerson debut was about an hour, like was the morning of the Sunday night game that he made his debut against I believe it was the Padres. That was his major league debut. Is he had literally woke up, had to drive from Tacoma to Seattle, get ready for the game. So
Yeah,
this is not the first time that they've done this to this year. Although Colt Emerson
but
was in AAA, not
but
A, so that's a
that's
significant
more
difference.
what I'm getting at is the high A to the big leagues. Like I've heard of, I've being around baseball and lower levels. Many times I've heard of guys that kind of at more at later portion, later stages of their careers end up being kind of organizational filler type guys. And so I've heard of like an A ball guy or high A guy getting called up to AAA for a day or a weekend because the AAA team needs a catcher or they need an arm to throw a couple innings. But you rarely hear about someone from the low minors getting the call up to the big leagues. Just kind of getting in his head for a minute. Like, what do you think that's like for a high A guy to get the call to the bigs?
I imagine it's as stressful as heck. So I'm reading the story on ML. I believe this is MLB.com. Yes. So Luke Rayleigh encounters. What happened is Luke Rayleigh gets injured. He encounters tightness. Again, he hasn't been back. Randy Arozarena goes to the IL. And then, so that's basically, they had nobody else. So after Aqua Sox batting practice, which, by the way, that wrapped up at 5, he was gearing up to play for Everett. He finishes his batting practice. He's hanging out with people. He's learning magic tricks. He get called into the office, and he's told, "You're off to Seattle tonight."
That's crazy.
That is crazy. It is crazy. Yeah, it's crazy because it's just, yeah, because you're right. You don't see this. And I gotta kind of apologize that I didn't really look at this with this much significance because there was so much other stuff going on. But yeah, he's on his way. I don't believe he got into the lineup, but yeah, that's a pretty cool story that you get to tell. And then you also got Brendan Donovan working his way back into the lineup. So yeah, that is.
I remembered as you were talking about that story, I remembered in 2018, the Blue Jays selected pitcher Elvis Luciano from the Royals organization in the Rule 5 draft. And in the Rule 5 draft, you have to keep the player on your major league roster for the entire next season or offer him back. So the Blue Jays carried Elvis Luciano in their bullpen for the entire 2019 season. 2018 with the Royals, he was in rookie ball. The Jays weren't contending, so they could basically throw away one spot because they weren't going to win anything. But when I ask you, about, when have you heard of that kind of a jump? I remember Luciano because he was Rule 5. He got bumped up from rookie ball to bigs, and for a whole year, and the Blue Jays had they wanted to keep him because they thought he had a future, which ended up not panning out. But yeah, that one probably one-ups this one a little bit.
Yeah, both great. You both like interesting those baseball stories. There's kind of those last minute things. I think that's great. Yeah, thanks for catching that because I didn't. It was not on my radar as much as it should have been with the Mariners for me this week because so much other stuff is going on here. We talked about the injury part of the conversation. The other significant conversation was Justin Hollander spoke to the media this week. And they basically are doing the original Piggyback. This is Piggyback 2.0. The original Piggyback did not go over well because it was poorly communicated. So they kind of discussed it with all of the pitchers, and the pitchers have all agreed to do this. So basically, in a nutshell, what the Piggyback is going to look like is one pitcher is going to get 5 innings, one pitcher is scheduled to get 4. So as an example of the game that you watched on Friday night, Bryce Miller was pitching for 5. Luis Castillo comes in for 4. Now, here's the problem: Bryce Miller, and this is not the first time this happened to poor Bryce, because it happened in another piggyback situation. He's dealing. Castillo comes in. He loses the game. Now they lose this one by 4 runs. The other one they lost by 1 run. And just one of those days for Castillo. Nothing was hit hard, but there was enough contact that it caused a problem. Like kind of a bit more. If you were to be completely honest, it was more of a defensive breakdown game than it was a Castillo poorly pitched game. But the problem is Castillo is not. Castillo's production this year is frustrating a lot of fans. And another day he's allowed more than, like, he's struggled all year. He continues to struggle. He's the guy that should be the obvious guy that goes into the bullpen, considering the starts for a lot of fans. You got Logan Gilbert, who is getting there. Bryce Miller, Brian Wu seem to be your top 3. And then you've got Kirby, who is inconsistent. Castillo, who's been consistently inconsistent and has really struggled this year. And then Bryce Miller has kind of been dealing since he's been back. Here's the other problem: is Munoz has struggled and is injured. Matt Brash is not back yet, so now your bullpen is down. So this piggyback situation has the one of 2 things are going to happen here. Either this is going to be one of the most brilliant moves in baseball history, or it's going to be an unmitigated disaster. I don't know how it's going to be in the middle. I don't mean to be too extreme on that, but the best thing that this will do is it rests your bullpen. The worst thing that it does is it completely throws off your starting pitching staff, which is the backbone of your team.
I watched a lot of the game on Friday or last night with Miller starting and then Castillo coming in, and Miller was great for 5 innings, and then, as per, I guess, was the plan, they go to Castillo, and I kind of agree with what you saw. Is he wasn't giving up a ton of extra base. They weren't crushing him, but he wasn't missing any bats. He was getting to 2 strikes and not putting anybody away, and they were able to make contact. Just get hits. I remember the younger Luis Castillo with, was it the Twins, who had devastating swing and miss stuff, and it doesn't look like he has that anymore. But where you have Bryce Miller, who threw great, and I don't know if he's been throwing like that. But
yes, he has been. He's been really good.
His count wasn't very high, and then they go to the veteran, who is there some veteran status at play there with him getting his innings in, because he's the veteran guy, and I can't imagine Bryce Miller is very happy. Is kind of what I got from it. Is he was rolling, and the diminished veteran comes in just cause and doesn't have it, and loses the game for him.
It is partly that veteran presence that Castillo is presenting. They're trying to find a place for him. But his average exit velo right now is 90.4. Hard hit percentage, and this is according to the Baseball Savant, is 44%. He's got a 4.59 ERA. Again, last night, you're right, he wasn't bashed, but he's making his defense work.
You
The
can't put anybody away, and
they
everything's
don't
put in
have. I
play.
don't know what the. Yeah, and that's the like you can't. I mean, you would like to get strikeouts, and ultimately the Mariners. Look, here's the other side of this argument, though. Before we like completely throw Luis Castillo under the bus, which is the easiest thing to do, but they had the bases loaded, and J.P. Crawford came to the plate, and they came out of that inning with no runs.
That's true.
You still have to produce, like, quite honestly, I like with all due respect to the Red Sox, that was a winnable game for them. Like they didn't hit well that game. They did not
Yeah.
hit well. I mean, Ranger Suarez was dealing with a no hitter guys going into the late inning, 6th or 7th inning before they got to him, or one hit, I think, or like only Cal Raleigh was got on base and at the before the 7th. So I believe it was a no hitter. So your offense still needs to contribute. And look, I think that this is. I think it's the two things can be true here. I think Castillo is struggling, but the Mariners again have to find a way to hit. But I don't think that they know what to do yet. And here's the other dilemma that's about to come into play here. Cade Anderson is dominating Double A, like historically dominating Double A, like, and he's ready to come up. And I think that they're going to put him in the bullpen and Cade Anderson. So now this is another spot. I mean, can you? He's not in the Scherzer. Castillo's not in the Scherzer. He's completely done. I don't think you're not going to trade Castillo. It's just I think that they're trying to deal with this as best as they can. I think they're very fortunate that they're in a very terrible AL West where the team behind them is allowing 23 runs one game, 12 runs another game. And they're kind of lucky that way that they can play around with this philosophy. Is it sustainable? No. Is there another solution? No, not right now. That's the thing. Like, what do you? I think everybody's trying to do the best that everybody can here. Like,
yeah,
and that's not the only player that's causing a bit of an anchor here. Rob Refsnyder has not worked out for the Mariners. He was supposed to be the right hand bat that was a help this lineup. I wouldn't be surprised if his 137, 3 homers and 9 RBIs is released before the All-Star break. He's just not been good enough. They're getting Brendan Donovan as close to coming back. You've got JP, like, you got to find a place for Brendan Donovan. You're not taking Colt Emerson out of the lineup. You're not taking Cole Young out of the lineup. And then you've got other guys that are doing the job. People forgot about Victor Robles, but he's an option. Mitch Garver's you also have 3 catchers and Johnny Pareda that kind of actually, I don't think it's necessarily fair that he's been sent down. I think he might be the better right-hander bat than Rob Refsnyder. So the Mariners are kind of in this position where they've got a lot of decisions to make. I don't want to say they have too many good players, but they've got too many options right now.
right.
And I think that for Mariner fans, I think a lot of people feel that Dan Wilson overthinks and like just the whole lefty righty situation, pitching situation. I think he's trying to do the best he can with what he's been given. But at some point, they got to make some decisions going forward with this team.
Yeah.
Like you cannot go. I don't think they can go on like this longer than the All-Star break. There has to be some decisions.
Right. And maybe in future episodes, we'll get into Dan Wilson and Schneider a little bit, because something you said there about Wilson is kind of true of Schneider too, I think, where and it happened early this week where John Schneider's pinch hitting decisions were coming under fire, and probably rightly so. But for the Jays anyway, in my opinion, the team just needs to execute more. Um, Schneider's tactical decisions, who to hit, where to hit them, have been under fire, but the team is not performing up to anywhere close to where they can. If they're halfway closer to how much to where their performance should be, these situations never come up. And so, to a certain extent, a manager needs his players to do what they can do. Because if they're consistently not, then it leads the manager to need to think like he needs to overmanage, and that's when the spotlight gets hotter on the manager.
One of the smarter baseball people I listen to is Mariner insider Shannon Dreyer, and she said something really interesting this week, where it was essentially, yes, of course these manager decisions look bad; they're not hitting.
Yeah.
And that probably assumed that that's the same thing with John Schneider. When they're not executing their what's supposed to happen, of course it looks bad. Like tactically, it may make sense in their mind, but you still got the player that has to execute the.
Exactly.
Yeah. I kind of feel with Dan Wilson anyway. I feel like a lot of people are a bit too critical of him. I think in a situation, I'm a bit higher on Dan Wilson than maybe a lot of Mariner fans in that he's keeping a composure in a very, not that it's a difficult situation, not like this is dire or anything like that, but he doesn't show a lot of emotion. And I think that that's a good thing. And sometimes, not that Scott Service didn't, but it's just, Wilson's kind of stoic. He doesn't give you his emotion one way or the other. And I think that there is a benefit to that. I think that people can criticize that. I don't necessarily know if he's the same way in the locker room that he is in the public. I think that that's something I'm not quite sure about. But
and
yeah,
I think that's a consistent factor that a lot of fans don't realize is like similar thing has been a talking point with Schneider about him being relentlessly positive in his media and saying the same things, and the world can be falling around him seemingly, but he's always positive, and there's some fans that want him just to raise hell in the media and just put everyone on blast. And one thing is you can only play that card so often. But the other thing is the biggest thing is the what he says and does in the room is completely different to what the media is going to see, and that's good, and that's intentional. So yeah, we don't, in either case, we don't really know what they're like to their team when nobody's around. When Schneider was the manager of the Vancouver Canadians a few years ago, I've known some people who covered him at that point, and apparently he is John Schneider is capable of intensity. He just doesn't let it show that much in the media, which is okay. I think fans just sometimes they want to see it too. Um, but I think there is more heat happening. We just don't see it.
yeah, and let's not forget it's not only the manager; it's a staff. You got a pitching staff. You've got, for example, one of the guys that's getting a lot of credit right now in Seattle is the infielder coach Perry Hill. He's a guy that is really becoming. I would not be surprised if we hear his name and manager names going in future managers going forward in interviews. Eric Young is another guy that gets a lot of credit here. Um, he's the first base coach. And someone else that's kind of been involved in this sort of roster construction. I'm just pulling up his name because I know his. He's not a guy that I necessarily like. He's not really well known in Mariner land. And I'm pulling up the staff name here, but he's a guy that I remember Shannon Dreyer talking a little bit about this week, and I just while we're at it, I wanted to kind of bring him up here. I mean, you've got the hitting coach Kevin Teitzer. It is Trent Blank. Trent Blank is the major league coach and director of pitching strategy. So he's the guy kind of behind this piggyback. He's one of the people that kind of has implemented this. So, again, this is either brilliant or crazy, this whole situation. But, like, this is a staff, is my big point. And there's so many other people that contribute to this. And, yeah, just I think the name that you need to remember in Seattle is Trent Blank, because he's the guy that he's either going to get a lot of credit for how this works or he's going to be blasted into the sun.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So we've covered the Mariners. We've covered the Blue Jays. We had a few MLB topics. Let's kind of just focus on one, and we'll kind of, because just in the interest of time, because we're at an hour and a half. Well, other than the other 20 minutes, we're close to an hour and a half. Let's talk about the home run derby, going back to the swings instead of the clock. Kind of liked the clock. I don't. But I think I don't really have an opinion one way or the other about this. I liked the clock. I didn't hate it. I think that the way that they're doing the swings, though, is kind of interesting in that for like the final one, you hit until you for the third round, you hit home runs until you don't get one. So if you hit like 10 in a row and then one is done, then you're finished. If you missed your first one, you're done. Yeah. I think that's interesting. That will be the interesting concept on that one.
Yeah, that's an interesting recall. I personally hated the home run derby clock with a passion. It was horrible. The TV viewer couldn't see what was going on because balls were being put in play before the previous balls had landed, and they theoretically had a rule that the pitcher had to wait until the previous ball had landed, but that didn't happen. It was sensory overload. There was no way to see everything. There was no way to appreciate it. The home run derby is supposed to be a spectacle, and it took away from it. Going too fast took away from it. Going back to swings for me is going to be huge to return it back to something that viewers can appreciate and really take it in. I think it's going to become much more viewer friendly now, and I think you're going to see better performances now because the clock just grinded hitters into the ground, taking that many swings in that short of a period. So you're going to see fresher hitters deeper into their rounds too. So you're going to see more home runs. So yeah, for me, it's great news that they're going back to swings. But honestly, man, I after the, I couldn't tell you the last time I made a point to watch one. There's been times where I'm flipping through and it's on. So I'll stumble across it, but I don't remember the last time I made a plan to watch the home run derby or the All-Star game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a good mental break from baseball. It's for the kids.
Yeah,
We sound old. It's for the sponsors. It's all of that.
yeah,
No, yeah. Um, I mean, just the one other thing I would say is when you have family members throwing baseballs to family members, they're going to find an edge to get you, try to get ahead. So if
yeah,
it was ever just one pitcher pitching to all of everybody, I think that would have been a fairer way to do the home run derby, but adding the family element, which is completely within the right, and I think an important story.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's why. All
Uh,
right, let's go to
I,
Canada.
yeah. Um, so just a couple things here. We had a unique debut, major league debut for Trey Cruz of the Tigers, and he went to high school in Texas, but he was born in Toronto when his dad, Jose Cruz Jr., was playing for the Blue Jays, and Trey Cruz makes the Cruz family the fifth three-generation major league family. Trey debuted for the Tigers a couple of days ago. I'm not finding it right now, but yeah, kind of unique that the Cruz family is the fifth three-generation major league family, and Blue Jays fans will remember Jose Cruz Jr. from the late '90s teams.
Yes.
Um, and I guess we need to mention that today the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame is inducting their 26th class. Some notable names on there. Devon White, iconic center fielder from the Blue Jays. Um, Stubby Clapp, Kate Soda from the women's national team. Bill Stoneman, a former Expos pitcher and executive. Paul Runge, who is a retired major league umpire, and receiving the Jack Greeny Award is Hazel May of Sportsnet, who's covered the Blue Jays for a long time, still does, and she had a tenure covering the Red Sox as well. So I wanted to give a tip of the cap to all the inductees of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. And also a little bit of Canadian content at the College World Series going on right now. The NCAA D1 College World Series. Tyrus Hall of Victoria and the Victoria Eagles. He's at the World Series right now with West Virginia. Mateo Pare from LaSalle, Ontario. He's a pitcher with Troy University. Dayton LeChance from Sherbrooke, Quebec, is a catcher with Oklahoma. And Blue Jays fans will remember Troy Tulowitzki. He is a hitting and infield coach with the University of Texas. All of them are in Omaha right now. Very cool event. Never been myself. That's a bucket list thing for kind of a college baseball nerd, is to get to Omaha for the College World Series.
Yes. Can I add one more thing to the Canadian story? It's not.
Yep.
It is baseball. We should talk about the women's national team, softball national team. They are at 3-0 in Prague. They beat Chinese Taipei, pardon me, to earn a spot in the Olympic softball qualifying tournament. So our friend Peter Labardius has been calling some of their games. You can watch those games on DAZN if you have it. I know DAZN has been part of the media vernacular conversation the last couple of weeks with the CFL. But I wanted to give them a shout out as well, as they're playing in Prague. So we should wish them some luck too.
For sure.
Yeah. Anything else we need to talk about?
No, just look ahead for the Blue Jays. For me, they have one more game at Wrigley tomorrow, and then they have a season-long 10-game homestand starting on Monday when Shane Bieber comes back. They have 3 against the Astros, 4 against the Rangers, and 3 against the Mets. 3 teams under 500, 10 straight games at home. For me, this homestand is going to tell you if the this is going to tell you if the Blue Jays have a chance of doing anything or not. If they go 5-5 in a 10-game homestand against sub 500 teams, this team isn't going to do anything, and I don't see them unless they really fall several games out of the wild card. I don't see them selling because I don't think they're going to drop that far back to the wild card. But if they don't show signs of being a serious threat through this homestand, I don't think they'll be an aggressive buyer at the deadline. It'll probably just be bit pieces to get them through. But I'm looking for a 7-3 or 8-2 on this homestand. Just take care of business. Give the upstairs people a reason to believe that this team is worth adding on to, because you have the last year of Kevin Gausman's contract, the last year of Springer, the last year of Dalton Varsho. If the Blue Jays can show their brass that there still is hope for this thing to come together, because the rest of the league has let them hang around, then they could add on to it significantly at the deadline. So yeah, what I'm looking for the next 10 days is this homestand. See what this homestand next 10 days is going to show us what they're going to be.
For the Mariners, they've got of course, they're wrapping up against the Red Sox, but then they go on the road for a fascinating road trip. I'm really interested in this series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. You got Paul Skeen, Connor Griffin. I'm just really interested in watching this team a little closer than I have been. Then you got the Guardians. Then they're home to the Angels. And then the 4th of July, Jonathan, the Toronto Blue Jays and the Seattle Mariners make their first face for the first time since the American League Championship Series.
That is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
The Blue Jays
I assure
Seattle
you, or I hope to assure you, that the Canadian invasion, I don't think is going to be as significantly allowed as it has been in the past.
I've been to the Blue Jays in Seattle before when there's probably about 20,000 Blue Jays fans there, and I have a lot of friends in Seattle, and they tell me about people, Mariners fans, who stay away from that series because they're angry at the Canadians for hijacking their ballpark for a weekend.
Yeah.
That's in regular conditions. 4th of July. You're right. It's probably not going to be as significant a Blue Jays takeover because that's already a significant date for Mariners fans to get there. But I want to see it. Yeah.
I think this is going to be absolutely fascinating.
I like seeing fun stuff. I just wanted to see what that looks like. Similar thing. I actually need to get this in when I was talking about the Blue Jays. Couple of days before that, they have Bo Bichette with the Mets in
Yes.
Toronto on Canada Day. And there's been debate about the kind of reception that Bichette will get from the Blue Jays fans, and I don't anticipate his reception being anything short of 100% positive. There's no reason in my mind to give him anything less than a hero's welcome, regardless of him signing somewhere else, which was his right. He was a Blue Jays homegrown star who, was part of getting them to the first World Series since '93. Hit what would have, should have, could have been an iconic home run in Game 7 against the Dodgers. So, yeah, looking forward to that too. So, it's going to be a fun few days for the Jays to start off July.
Yes, will be. All right, let's leave it there. How do we follow us again?
Yeah, so Substack Out of Left Field podcast. Our episodes live on YouTube and Spreaker. We are on X at Outa LF Pod, OUTTALF Pod. Facebook, Out of Left Field, and Instagram is the same as the X. I think I covered it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you, everyone, for their patience. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now. And